This is a presentation I gave at the International Clarinet Association's annual conference, ClarinetFest 2022, in Reno. I want to start by sharing a couple of excerpts with you from this, the opening of the first movement and the third movement, to help you understand why I fell in love with this piece. The Me Too movement brought a lot to the surface for me, and I took it upon myself as my personal crusade to seek out the music of women composers that I dismissed, overlooked, or simply knew nothing about. There isn't very much written for the clarinet by women before the mid-20th century. However, there is a lot more music written for strings by women composers from the past. What's amazing is that the deeper I have dug into music by women composers from the past, the more really excellent music I have found. Here you can see the folder on my computer of transcriptions of music by women, mostly from string music, I have already done or am planning to do in the future. When you adapt music from other instruments, you have to ask yourself, is it worth the effort? Transcribing is not merely transposing. It always takes more work than you think. Ask yourself, is this awesomeness really going to transfer to my instrument? Maybe, maybe not. Sometimes you don't know until you try. Here are a few transcriptions I've done of string music. The WC is a transcription of a transcription. Most are classical, but I've also done some transcriptions of jazz performances. Sweet Georgia Brown was lifted from a performance by the great jazz violinist Stefan Grappelli, who worked with Django Reinhardt. There's some great stuff out there. Don't limit yourself. imslp.org should be no secret to anyone, I hope. It's a huge free collection of sheet music in the public domain that is copyright-free. Copyright-free music in the U.S. is music that was published 95 years ago or earlier. The website doesn't have everything, but it's got a lot. There's even an IMSLP app. I use it to browse and sight read music on my iPad. Sites dedicated to a particular composer can help you learn about and locate music. Here you see the two main sites for Rebecca Clarke. One of them is maintained by her grandnephew, who owns the rights to most of her compositions, but not the viola sonata, which was published in 1919. The other site is maintained by the Rebecca Clarke Society, and there's a lot of scholarly literature about her and her music there. There are digital collections of music at libraries around the world with PDFs that are free to read and download. Here are a few examples of music I've found. A first edition of Lily Boulanger's Cortège at the French National Library. The manuscript of a piece for cello and piano by Fanny Mendelssohn Hensel at the Berlin State Library. And the manuscript of Rebecca Clarke's Viola Sonata, which is at the Library of Congress. Libraries also offer services where they will scan things for you if those items aren't available online. In general, it's legal to perform a piece of music that's in copyright on a different instrument as long as you don't change the music beyond adapting it for your instrument. However, there's a whole world of performance licenses, video sync licenses, publication rights, and differences in laws in different countries that we're not going to cover here because I can refer you to an excellent video on these issues. It's the ICA New Music Lunch and Learn presentation on YouTube by Daniel Dorff and Jay Berger, and it's entitled Demystifying Copyright. They cover a lot. I can't recommend it enough. I even sent a link to all of my music colleagues at Western Carolina University. I usually scan music with the iPhone app Scannable, since it has automatic features to find and crop images. Then I use the app PlayScore 2 that is available for various devices. The Pro version for iPhone is $27 per year. This app is music recognition software. It takes music from images and plays the music for you. PlayScore 2 can also translate this music into a music XML file that you can open in a music notation program. Here you see me open up PlayScore 2 on my phone where I've already uploaded a PDF file of Lily Boulanger's Cortège. I can select the instrument sounds I want to hear for each staff and set the tempo. And then I automatically hear the music on the page as recognized by PlayScore 2. Then I send the music XML file to my computer, and I upload that file directly into Finale. And here you see that file. PlayScore doesn't capture every little thing, and it isn't completely accurate, but it gives me a great head start entering the music into Finale. I recommend scanning from a clean, modern edition. This is especially important if you're trying to read the handwriting of, say, Clara Schumann, whose handiwork you see here. Then consult whatever you can find in the manuscript and/or earlier editions for differences. There are a lot of good practices to make your music readable to others. As a performer, I get really annoyed at composers and arrangers who give me music with bad page turns, weird spacing, odd use of accidentals or keys, or not numbering measures. Whenever I have to write in cues for myself to know where I am, I put those cues in the part for others. It's mostly about being a good citizen to the performer, and even if the performer will only be you, it makes sense to make it as easy to read and use in order to save time and frustration. I've only changed keys of music for pedagogical reasons. I actually haven't found the need to do it yet for my own performance transcriptions. I try to avoid asking a pianist to learn a piece in a new key. I favor B-flat clarinet when it makes sense, so that I can share transcriptions with my students easily, but I don't shy away from using A clarinet if I think it serves the music better. In the case of the Rebecca Clarke, I tried both transcriptions, and the A clarinet won out for two reasons. Fingerwork was a bit easier on the A clarinet, and the darker timbre of the A clarinet seemed to fit the music better. You always have to address range and registers in transcriptions. Just because you can play something in the original octave doesn't mean you should. I tried this passage in the original octave, but it sounded richer and more expressive if I took the whole phrase down an octave. Here's the original. Here's my transcription. If you change the octave, do it with a whole section, phrase, or passage so that the musical line sounds fluid, not disjunct, and make sure you aren't covered by or covering other instruments. You can also switch out which instrument is playing which passage. I transcribed the violin part to Mel Bonus's trio for violin, flute, and piano. The violin part was higher than the flute part sometimes, so in a couple of passages, the flutist and I traded parts. I find that the best way to tackle these kinds of issues is to try different versions out in rehearsal with the other musicians. With double stops or more, I transpose the whole chord so I have it on the page, and after experimentation, I often end up just playing the top note of the chord. I'll sometimes add a single grace note for another chord tone if it doesn't sound too fussy or slow me down. I'm not a big fan of arpeggiated grace notes to stand in for a chord, especially if it obscures the melodic line. You can get away with more grace notes in a slow movement like a Bach's sarabande, but I think we should be okay with the limitations of our single-line instrument in places where it wouldn't work stylistically to create chords on the clarinet. The piano is actually playing most or all of the chord notes that the viola has, so there's no point in playing the lower notes of the chord. The viola plays with the mute on in this movement, so you don't want to be heavy-handed. Here's the original. Here's my version. As a professional violist, Rebecca Clarke knew what her instrument could do well, and this passage from the third movement starting on the second line here just doesn't work as written for clarinet. Single note repetitions, known as bow tremolos, where a string player bows back and forth quickly on a string, it's not something we can emulate so well. I substituted a trill for the first section and then tried the repeated note thing in my concerts in the fall, but I was never completely happy with this solution. Here's some of my first attempts so you can hear what I don't like. I decided that I wanted to do something different here to increase intensity without sounding weird. I tried changing octaves and different tremolos and trills, experimenting with the pianist in rehearsal. This is what we recently came up with. I start with the trill, then move to a more powerful tremolo at the forte, and then it became necessary to change the notes to work with the harmony near the end of the passage. Apologies for the out-of-tune piano. We recorded this in a teaching studio. This is a relatively doable passage for a professional violist to play, and a relatively extremely hard passage for a professional clarinetist to pull off. This is mostly what it would look like if I just played the original passage on clarinet. It was cumbersome, it was difficult to play softly, and I didn't want to have to slow down the pianist to play my part. I feel really good about the changes I made with this one. Because it's delicate accompaniment, revoicing the arpeggios to the shallow register really helped to create that calm legato feel. You can see that Clarke uses a lot of expression and articulation markings. I tend to put all of this information in, including string markings like bowings, because these are musically meaningful. I know in general to de-emphasize the notes on up bows and emphasize the notes on down bows. And for publication, I might replace a down bow marking with an accent or tenuto marking, depending on what I think best communicates the composer's intentions. I knew when we performed this last fall that I wasn't completely ready to call this our final transcription yet. What I didn't realize was how many notes I had performed incorrectly in the second movement because I didn't transcribe all the harmonics right. I now know there are different ways to indicate harmonics on string instruments. The normal-looking eighth notes with circles over them indicate the sounding pitch, but the diamond-shaped notes indicate fingerings. So in order to find the correct sounding pitches for the diamond-shaped harmonics, I listened to the recording slowed down and checked the notes with a chart of viola harmonics that I got online. The chart wasn't easy to decipher, and I'll definitely run all the notes by a violist just to be sure before I perform this again. There also turned out to be a written high C that I actually think might work here. Here's the passage on viola. Some of the choices I've made here may not be what you would choose, and that's cool. Adapting music to work for you on your instrument is a personal, creative process. I am preparing my transcriptions of music by women composers for digital publication through my website, laniganlimited.com, and the Rebecca Clarke will be available there after we record the final version. I hope this was helpful for you, and thank you for your interest. Feel free to contact me at Thompson@wcu.edu if you have any questions or comments.